Hey everyone, I'm very happy to announce that after 10 very long years, my game, Super Donuts, is finally finished and ready to play. It's been such an incredibly challenging journey to get the game into the playable state that it's in today, and that story begins all the way back in 2015. So the year before, in 2014, I actually graduated from a game design course and I started in the IT world doing a regular boring old office job. And about a year into that job, I really wanted to revisit some game development, and I decided in the end to make a really quick prototype of a game. I thought maybe it would take about a week or two and I could upload it at the time onto Newgrounds. It was just going to be a tiny little flash game called Super Donuts, and then that would be the end of it, and then I'd move on to a bigger project. Well, little did I know that 10 years later I would still be working on that exact same project that I began just as a moment of random boredness after biting into a donut at work one day and coming up with the idea of rolling a donut around and collecting things. It's just insane that it took that long, but there is a good reason for that, and the journey has not been easy. So after I made that prototype in 2015, I basically got it up and running in a few weeks, and I was kind of happy with it, and then I kind of wanted to turn it into something more. It was going to be a big, grand platforming adventure, and I spent ages at work writing down all of these ideas when I was bored, and then emailing them to myself back at home so I could work on it in the evenings after work. And my girlfriend at the time very kindly made me some really nice sprites that I could use instead of my terrible programmer placeholder graphics, and the game was coming along quite nicely. So I kind of decided to take it seriously in around January, February 2016, and I actually got quite far with that, but then the first of many roadblocks got in the way. The computer actually completely crashed on me one day. So I'd been working on the game pretty much non-stop every single day after work for the past few months, and then all of a sudden, completely out of the blue, the program just crashed completely. It wouldn't let me save the project, it wouldn't let me export the project anymore. All I could do was open it up. I couldn't do anything for the game, so I was so frustrated, and I kind of felt like that's going to be the end of that game. I'll move on to something else. In the end, I decided, well, at least I can still open the project. I'm going to try and make it again from scratch. And I spent about another 2 months or so going through and taking screenshots of everything and then recreating it again. And somewhere during that process, I decided to actually turn it from a PC game into a mobile game, because I'd been playing a lot of games on my phone, but I wasn't really that fond of how they controlled using the touchscreen. So I thought, I'm really going to simplify this and just boil it down to what are the most basic core elements that a platformer needs. You need to be able to move, and you need to be able to collect things and finish the stage. So it was incredibly simple what I boiled it down to. You basically just had left on one side of the screen, right on the other side of the screen, and you could press the two buttons to move the donut left and right. So you can see the game running on the actual device now, and hopefully, I haven't actually tried this on my phone, so yeah, that works perfectly. After I wrote all my original ideas, so I got all these, I decided to get myself a project book and actually take this a bit more seriously. You see that switch there, that when you press that, it actually turns the fan off. I could make something simpler, but I really want to make this. I don't know why, I just feel like I really want to make this. So it's going to happen, no matter how long it takes. The idea was that I would spend maybe another year on development and turn it into a really good iOS and Android game, and that's exactly what I did throughout 2016. So 2017 rolled around now, and I actually decided to start a Kickstarter in order to fund the developer's license for iOS, the Android Play license to put it on the Android store, the license for Stencil to be able to export it into these formats. And I got really excited about the idea, so I launched the Kickstarter. That actually did really well, and I was very happy with the response from that. Obviously, Kickstarter does have the downside that if you're trying to get people's attention, you keep adding more and more features, and there was no way I was going to fulfill some of those things. And I think it's a roadblock that a lot of people hit when they try and set up a Kickstarter, is they don't really know if they're actually able to actually do some of the things that they promised. There was something when I was looking back over the Kickstarter though. I did actually say that if I hit a certain goal, I would look into making a PC version, and obviously I didn't hit it back then, but in the years that have followed, that has finally become a reality because this new one is out there to play on PC. But yeah, the Kickstarter did really well. I did a bunch of update videos as I was working on the game throughout the Kickstarter phase, and then a bunch after as well, and you can actually look back on my channel and see some of those original videos, and they're quite fun to watch these days and just see how different the game and my ideas were for it back then, considering what it actually became all these years later with this new PC release. And an interesting bit of RetroBreak lore as well, that Kickstarter was actually the first time that the RetroBreak brand was actually ever used. So I spent the rest of 2017 working on the game and getting it ready for release on iOS and Android, and I was so excited for the launch. I'd spent, at that point, nearly 2.5 years working solidly on the game to get it ready. So the game officially launched on December 2nd, 2017, and I was so excited. I was sat there ready to watch the reviews coming in and ready to watch the sales and everything and see people's reactions, and there was nothing. No one seemed to care at all. The people who got the code through Kickstarter or friends and family, they all really seemed to enjoy the game and they really liked it, and I got a lot of great feedback from people that I know personally, but in terms of the game being on the store, it just got completely ignored. I had the sales figures at the end of it, and on iOS I made 7 sales over the year that it was out on the store, and on Android I made a grand total of 0, or at least I didn't get any money from it on Android whatsoever, because I think Google withholds some and they don't show you the full numbers. But either way, it was a disaster of a launch, I can say that at least. I was having a look back on the Facebook and Twitter page, and the day it launched I got no likes on the launch day trailer or anything. It was like, it was just completely lost in the mist of everything else that was going on at the time, and honestly, that really genuinely upset me for a long time. I was like, have I just wasted 2 years of my life and no one cares? Like, what was the point of all of this? What was the point of me putting in so much time and effort into something that, well, I had to look at the stats, I could see the leaderboards and things, and there was only 6 people in the end that had actually played the game, and the furthest anyone had ever got was like 40% of the way through. So yeah, to say I was a little bit disappointed and maybe I had unrealistic expectations is an understatement. I was completely put off like doing games at all for the longest time, and I just thought, that's it, I give up, no one cares. But obviously that's not how I should think, and I should think this is my first project. Obviously people aren't going to care because they don't know who I am. I didn't have a YouTube following back then anyway like I do today. I didn't really have any experience making games or marketing or anything. I honestly don't know what else I could have expected. It did as good as feasibly possible at the time, I think, anyway. But yeah, it's easy to say that in hindsight. At the end of 2018, I left it on the store for a year. I had to pay the license fees to keep it on the store, so that's like $200 to Apple, 100 to Google, and whatever else to Stencil, and I obviously hadn't made any money, and it was a big chunk of change out my pocket. So I thought, now I'm going to take it off the store, forget it ever existed in the first place, just delete it from existence, and I did just that. So from 2019 onwards, the game realistically didn't exist, and I always had the idea of either making a sequel or moving on to another project, and I've done a whole video about my game dev journey if you want to see some of the other failed projects. At some point, I always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to bring the game back onto the PC, so I haven't even mentioned some of the other issues. So at that point, the game had spanned across like 5 different computers, and every time things would get corrupted along the way, the program wasn't being updated, but the operating systems were, and everything was breaking compatibility all over the place. So by the time I'd actually got round to looking at it again properly, which was probably around 2021, early 22 maybe, it was almost impossible to even open the project. I'd lost most of the original assets, but thankfully I did still have the file for the game to actually open it up in the game engine. But the problem was the game engine was so far removed from where it was in 2014, which is when I originally downloaded it, and that's the version that I built it on. Taking the version from 2014 and trying to bring that into the version from 2022 just broke so much of the code in the background. It was almost completely unplayable. So again, I put it off for another year or so, thinking, yeah, this is never going to happen. But then I wanted to try and get back into game dev again, but I thought, before I make a new game, I want to make Super Donuts into the game that I always knew it could be, and give it another shot to put it back out there into the world and see what people think today. So in 2023, January 2023, I opened it back up, and I thought, this time I'm going to do everything in my power to get the game back up and running and get it working on the PC. And that was an incredible challenge over the past 2 years now to get that back up and running. Basically, I remade the entire game from scratch. I took out all of the original code that was based around the iPhone and the Android and rebuilt it all for the computer, for the keyboard, and rewrote it all to work in HTML5, which is the version that you can play today. So that was like an almost insurmountable challenge, but I finally managed to accomplish it. And not only did I get everything up and running again, I actually fixed all of the issues that I had with the original game. There was a bunch of things that I wasn't happy with, and there was a bunch of ideas that I never got around to implementing. So this new version is basically a complete rewrite. Basically, every single level has been either slightly redesigned, completely redesigned, or I scrapped the original one completely and made a completely brand new level. The entire game is just so much more fun to play. It's so much more polished than that original mobile version. I've included a whole bunch of new challenges. There's now time trials. Every level has the same amount of collectibles, just like some of the classic games that inspired it, like Banjo-Kazooie, where you go around collecting 100 music notes. In this game, you go around collecting 100 sweets. I added all of the different percentage completion calculations, so now it actually is possible to get 100%, whereas on the old phone version, I never actually fully figured out whether it was actually possible. The HUD is completely redesigned. There's a whole bunch of new graphics and sound effects. The music's been reworked into the different levels. The boss fights have pretty much all been completely redone from scratch. All of the code to show the level names and the scores on the hub world, that's all been completely redone. There's now a new sign next to the levels that shows you how far you are into that stage and how many of the challenges you've completed. There's now a flag next to the levels to show you whether you got 100%. There's a new total screen. There's a new ending sequence. There's new gameplay mechanics, like there's a level set in space with zero gravity. There's a level that's a pinball table. There's brand new challenge modes. There's new speed levels. There's new characters. There's new dialogue. Basically, it's a completely brand new game that's built from the ground up for the computer, and I've spent the past 2 years working on this new version of the game, and I wanted to wait until I was 100% satisfied that this game is as good as it can be. So at the end of the day, was it worth all of the stress and those 10 years that it spent basically in development hell? I can honestly say that when I managed to do my final playthrough for the game and managed to get 100% and everything finally worked smoothly, I was almost in tears. It was literally like a weight had been lifted, and I don't think I've felt that happy in a long time. I'm just over the moon that it's done, and finally, it's now a project that I can completely be proud of. I was never that happy with the original iPhone and Android game, but this one, I've honestly put my heart and soul into it, and I really hope that comes through in the game and in the gameplay, and I really hope that you guys and girls enjoy it as much as I've enjoyed making it. You can play the game right now, completely for free, on my itch.io page. It's retrobreak.itch.io. Go and enjoy the game, let me know what you think of it, and I'll see you all again very soon.